My name is Sinead Bitascone. I am the second vice president of LAM, and I'm the director of the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame and Northwest Louisiana History Museum up here in Natchitoches. I want to welcome our presenter, Sophie Ziegler, head of digital programs and services at LSU. And this presentation is Y'all Means All, Participatory Digitization Initiatives at LSU Libraries. I should have practiced that title before this morning. So we're going to ask that you all stay muted and that we save the questions to the end, and that you can use the chat to ask to put questions in. We're kind of a small group, but the chat might be a little bit easier to control. And like I said before, if you don't want to be part of the recording, you can turn the video off. So Sophie, I'm going to let you take it away. Oh, you might be muted. We can't hear you.
Oh, I haven't started talking yet.
Oh, okay.
Hello, everybody. I'm just trying to make sure I get everything. Janae, can you give me a quick thumbs up if you can hear me well and see my screen?
Yes, it looks great. I can hear you.
Fantastic. Thank you, everybody. And in this presenter mode, I can't really see everybody who's here, but thank you all for showing up at 9 o'clock on what is here in Baton Rouge, at any case, rainy, rather gloomy day, but I'm delighted to be here. This is my first ever LAM conference. I'm so delighted to be here. So thank you, Janae, for helping all of my pre-questions, all my silly questions. And Kyle, thank you for all your work in getting me set up with this. So again, my name is Sophie Ziegler, and I'll be talking about the Y'all Award, which is an initiative of LSU Libraries to grow and diversify the Louisiana Digital Library. This is what we'll go over real fast. I don't think it'll take that much time, and I'd love to hear any questions that you guys have, that y'all might have, or thoughts that y'all might have. But first, I'll do introductions to myself and also about y'all, the award, and then I'll talk a little bit about the values and goals, the sort of the background thinking behind it, and then the two main ways that it functions. It functions as both a mobile digitization lab and an open digitization lab. And then finally, I'll talk about how to apply, because hopefully at that point, everybody will be so eager to do so. Again, my name is Sophie Ziegler. I am the head of digital programs and services, as Janae mentioned, at LSU Libraries, which is one of those titles that I think is purposely broad, so they can just sort of put a lot of stuff under it. But one of the things that I do an awful lot is work with the Louisiana Digital Library, which I hope some of you may know is a statewide digital project, I guess, to provide a platform for institutions around the state, museums, libraries, archives, and other cultural heritage institutions to showcase their unique digital holdings. So what we're trying to do is sort of build a front door to the digital cultural heritage material of the state of Louisiana. Just a couple of other things about me real fast. I am a Louisiana native. I am from New Orleans originally, on the West Bank. That's right. Please hold your applause. Algiers. That's right. And I went to LSU for undergrad, and I've been in Philadelphia for about a decade when I became a librarian, but I'm back now, I'm happy to say. And I am, of course, as a native of Louisiana, very, very prone to understanding the precarious nature of our situation as it comes to both funding for cultural heritage institutions, as well as natural disasters. In fact, as I'll talk about in a little bit, the award hasn't actually progressed very much because of our continued natural disasters. So here we go. That's an introduction to me. Now an introduction to y'all. So the big idea is that this is a chance to share LSU Libraries digitization equipment and expertise with institutions otherwise unable to digitize their unique holdings. And that's actually one of the most important things. There are plenty of wonderful things to digitize around the state, but because of all the many constraints, we are focusing on institutions that are otherwise unable to digitize their holdings. So in addition to digitization, we also are willing to take on the work of uploading materials to the Louisiana Digital Library for our partner institutions, which again is our statewide digital library, currently with 35 participating members, and this is an initiative to grow that. And I'll say now that the pandemic really slowed us down, right? But we're hoping to get up and running again soon, which is just sort of what we all say here in 2021, as soon as things get back to normal. So just a couple of words about the values and goals going on here. So YAL is actually an acronym for You Are Louisiana's Legacy. I know what you're thinking, but yes, we are very proud of that acronym. We wanted to, because we think it's, not only an inclusive pronoun that we use here regionally, of course, as you know, but it's also, I think, gets to the core of what we're trying to do, which is increase representational diversity in the LDL, Louisiana Digital Library. Right, we know that the history of our collecting institutions is such that most of the material that we have to digitize and most of the things that we have been digitizing are over-representing a specific population, mostly well-to-do white patrons of the arts and cultures. So what we're trying to do is provide digital access and files to under-resourced cultural institutions, those that are not likely to be able to digitize and upload their own content to the LDL and are thus not particularly likely to become LDL members on their own. And then, of course, a show of gratitude here. When we were developing this award, we leaned very heavily on Mississippi Digital Library's Cultural Heritage Digitization Award, which does a lot of the same thing. They travel around the state of Mississippi digitizing materials for their smaller repositories in their area and uploading it to their central digitization space. And Georgia Public Library Services, Georgia Home Place, does sort of the same thing where they ship out digitization kits. If you ever have a chance to look into either or both of these, I think you might be able to find that they're both doing great things. We've talked to representatives and administrators at both of these to sort of help us think out what we can do and how we can do it here in Louisiana. So again, that's mostly how we got to this point. Oh, I've gone crazy. Okay, here we go. So the mobile, so there's again two main ways that this happens. There's the mobile digitization lab and the open digitization lab. Let's talk firstly about the mobile track. So again, the big idea here is that we, and by we I mean LSU libraries, we have digitization equipment, staffing, and expertise, and we can share it, right? So that's where we're starting. In practice, it kind of looks like this. We basically just pack up our equipment. We drive over to a host institution. We set up shop there. We digitize the materials that they've identified to be most important to them. Then we upload that to the LDL, and we leave digital copies for them and their patrons. As you can imagine, each one of these bullet points sort of has a lot more to say. There's a lot of small decisions that must go along with it, but this is basically what we're doing. We did our pilot project for this in the fall of 2019 in a world that seems very, very far away. We went to the Gill Museum in beautiful Gill, Louisiana. This is the Bicentennial Museum. They collect a lot of records of the local institutions, the local cultural life in Gill and the surrounding areas. And we used them as a pilot project. So we packed up our materials. We set out to the Gill Museum. We had 2 staff members stay there for 2 full working weeks, so 2 40-hour weeks, a total of 80 work hours. This was the pilot project, so we didn't have an application like we do now. So a lot of the time that we spent was actually making sure that the people at the Gill Museum who know the collection better than anybody else are the ones making the decision about what to digitize. So we were there in November 2019, as you can see, and we were working with them for the digitization selection based on the equipment that we had, based on the materials that they had, based on the formats, the size, the condition. And then we ended up digitizing 11 handwritten volumes, 2 volumes of business records, each of which were hundreds of pages long, 2 newspaper volumes, which is a local newspaper spanned over a decade of a local newspaper that's no longer in print, but of great local importance. And so in total, we scanned just under 3,000 pages of things. This is some of us on the left with the volunteers from the museum going through some of the initial materials that they first identified that they would like digitized. So we're taking a look at it here. We're having conversations about how much we will be able to do, what priorities they would like to establish, meaning what we should start with, just in case we run out of time. On the image to the right, that's our mobile, that's our digitization lab manager, Gabe, with the pink hair. working with the camera stand that we brought, and then my colleague Leah working with a flatbed scanner, working with, I think it's probably the journals there. And this is some of my colleagues with volunteers from the museum. We use this just to show that people are happy. Look at those smiles. I love it, especially here. So early in the morning. This is one of the collections that we digitized from the Gill Museum. So this is just a screenshot of what it looks like now in the digital library. So this is the tolling collection. That was a particular individual who kept a lot of journals that we digitized, a lot of local history. So all of that is now up in the Louisiana Digital Library. You're welcome to take a look. It's actually pretty great. This is just a quick shot of the first page of one of the journals. And as you may or may not be able to read here, it says the history of Gill High School. So there was a particular individual in the town of Gill who spent a lot of time documenting local history. And so that was one of the things that the volunteers at the museum identified as being very important for them and their local community. So that's one of the things that we digitized. And so now that's available for anybody who wants to see it in Gill and beyond. And it's also, this is, I think, very important and something that we'll keep going back to, answered the question that we brought to them. And when we were asking them, just like we ask everybody who works with us on the Yall Award, is to please, 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 when thinking about your collection, think about not only what you happen to think is the most important as a curator, as a volunteer within their organization, with a staff member, but also think about what would be the most devastating thing if your museum flooded, or if a fire came, or the next hurricane actually hit you. And think about what as a community you would miss the most. And that's really where we started when we thought about what to digitize. So from our pilot project in 2019, we learned a lot. So we worked out a lot of the logistics, including one of the most important things is how much we can actually digitize in a week. What paperwork is required for all the different staff members and all the different parts. I feel like we've got that ironed out to a much greater extent. We also figured out how to actually get equipment over there. And y'all, we were not fancy. We just rented a car and put it in the trunk. We were careful. We didn't trip and fall and break anything. But we also learned a lot about communication, because as you can imagine, this is a little tricky, right? So this was 2019. This project is kind of hard to explain to people, especially before we had any publication around it. We were just saying to people, we are willing to digitize things that you choose and put it in the LDL. Yes, we learned a lot about how to package our vision and really how to make sure that all of our partners saw themselves as partners, which was very important to us. We're not interested in just marching into a cultural heritage institution and making decisions on our own. Okay, so that was the mobile. This is the open. So the Yall Award has these two different options, sort of mirror options here. So the big idea here is that we have the digitization equipment and expertise, and we have a space, so we could just open our doors and let people come, right? So for this option, we invite professionals from other institutions. They travel to Baton Rouge. They'll digitize the cultural heritage material from their shop that they bring with us. We'll upload it to the LDL and or teach them how to do it. And then they'll take digital copies of files with them. And we are, I'm happy to say, able to provide funds to offset the cost of travel and accommodations for them, which is very huge, and we're very proud of that. And so we foresee this happening mostly with institutions that have enough staff to be able to spare somebody for a significant amount of time. But we also want this to be an opportunity where we can teach somebody how to use all of the equipment, and that we can just start to develop expertise around the state, as well as partnerships around the state with other folks. And then if you come visit us in our lab, this is just a couple of quick photographs from my phone that we have. But like, you know, you'd be able to use a lot of the same equipment. So camera stands and all of our camera lighting and overhead scanners and flatbed scanners and all the equipment that we have here. Okay, ordinarily what I do is ask now if there are any questions about that before we move on. But Janae, I'll follow your lead and we'll just do the questions at the end, and that'll be totally fine. But please do feel free to use the chat if you have any questions. But now what I'll do is transition into talking about how to apply. So unlike our pilot project, everybody moving forward will ask to actually apply. So you'll have an opportunity to identify the collections that you have in mind early on. So I'll start here with a couple of eligibility requirements. So we said that any cultural heritage institution located within the state of Louisiana can be considered for the award. And for our purposes, cultural heritage institutions are defined as organizations that work to preserve cultural heritage materials. So we are actually purposely leaving this broader than some of the examples that we've seen around the country that sometimes have constraints about staff size, for instance, or budget, or even tax standing. And we're trying to be a little bit broader than that. And here we have, by way of examples, public libraries, museums, historical societies, community archives, religious archives. And then it says here, prioritize institutions that hold historically significant collections and that lack digitization resources. So again, just like I was talking about before, there's plenty of really great things out there that we wish could be digitized. But at least at this early phase of the award, we are hoping to prioritize folks who just lack the resources to do it themselves. Continuing with the eligibility, materials must be in the public domain or have permission granted to digitize and make publicly available. And then we'll put that responsibility on the institution that we're partnering with. Just happy to answer more questions about that, but just please understand, we can't also be chasing down copyright. I think that's pretty standard. And then we do also ask that only permanent collections can be included. So anything privately owned or on loan from another institution, we ask that you wouldn't include in this. And this, again, is just goes back to really keeping track of permissions and copyright issues. And then we're willing to talk with you about this, but we're also seeking collections that could be completed within the 80 hours of digitization work. So again, the model that we have in mind would be 2 staff members working 40 hours at a location. And our preference includes collections that represent a portion of Louisiana's history or population not represented yet in the LDL. Collections that represent the state's racial, ethnic, and geographic diversity. And applicants who are able to assist with the description of materials will be preferred. And this last one goes back to just thinking about everybody being partners in this. Again, we're working with people who know their collections better than anybody else, certainly better than any of us who would be able to come to your institution. So we would just absolutely love it for applicants who can just help us describe it, so that it's adequately described, correctly described, and as useful as possible. Other things to note is not necessary to completely digitize a collection, right? So a project may consist of partial digitization. We are really most well suited for photographs, letters, manuscripts, postcards, books, periodicals, and maps. So basically anything photogenic or paper-based, bound or unbound, or easiest to accommodate. Again, that's just because of the equipment that's easiest for us to put in the car. But we are always happy to talk about that as well. Please do note, unfortunately, we are unable to digitize microfilm and microfiche. So that is a question that comes up a lot. I know a lot of us do have that materials, and it's getting harder to supply access to it to our patrons. It's also difficult, unfortunately, for us to be able to digitize that at this time. But what I do want to stress is that we are happy to talk about specifics. So if you have questions and or want to share early thoughts, we are available to talk to you about that during the application process. It's one of the reasons I'm here today for this conference, showing a very friendly face. I hope you now consider us friends and that you can reach out to me at any time about this. A note here about the significance, right? So for the application, we do ask that you explain the significance for the collection material. You'll be able to see a place for that in the application. So for example, you'll be saying something about why the content of this material is important and what kind of research it will enable. And then we also ask that you say something about the significance for your community, right? So how does this collection relate to the community that your institution serves? And how would your community benefit from having it digitized? As well as how might your collection appeal to users outside your community? And again, I think this is the type of thing as museum professionals, library professionals, we probably think about a lot, but this is just a chance on the application to explicate that. And you would have 1,000 words to do so. Let's see. So I do know, just check the time. So we do know that estimating the amount of material that can be digitized in a week is somewhat difficult, right? So based on our pilot, again, we had 80 hours of 80 professional hours happening. We were just around 3,000 scans in the course of the week. That will, of course, vary based on the size, type, and condition of materials. And we're offering this estimate in the hopes that it's helpful. But again, if you start an application, you have a lot of questions, you're not sure about the how to think about your specific collections in terms of this time frame, reach out. We're here. We're happy to help. We can tell you a lot more about the equipment specifics, sizes, formats, etc. But these are the typical steps in the selection process, and we've only been through this once. We're going out to a museum for a mobile digitization lab next month, but we've had to put it off again because of natural disasters. But so basically, the application review, we select semifinals. Excuse that typo. And then for anyone looking for mobile digitization lab options, we do site visits. I'll say more about that in a second. And then the award announcement. We're trying to, when we can, I should say, the goal is to be doing 2 of these a year. So either 2, in whatever configuration, mobile or open. But the site visits, for anybody interested in having our team visit you, what we would do is just go take a look. We've got sort of a checklist that we borrowed it almost verbatim from Mississippi. But we're just taking a look and make sure that any space at our partner institution, that there's enough space for us as humans and enough space for our equipment, and that that space won't interfere with visitor flow. As you can imagine, as you all know, right? As we all know, buildings are just shaped differently, and sometimes there's space for us, and sometimes there's not. Sometimes there's space for us, but it's offered in exhibit space. We don't want to be disruptive, and ideally, we would like our staff to just be able to work. And then finally, the ability to access the space in the collection 5 consecutive days. This is just for the needs of our staff. I know not a lot of institutions were open most of the week. So this is the type of negotiation that we'd have to go through, really, to make sure that somebody would be there with us, make sure we can get in the building, et cetera. Everybody, and then I don't have this here, but this is actually really important. Pre-visit, before we got started, you would know everybody who's going to be in your space, right? So you'll have a chance to meet our staff, who are professionally trained, full-time staff with LSU libraries. We're not sending over anybody we don't trust. The application is just very simple. I'll send this link out, you don't have to try to memorize this, but it's just a web form from the LSU library's website. We try to keep it as light as possible, and throughout we have reminders on the application that you can definitely ask us questions. Okay, so that is that. I am just about done with my slide deck, and I hope we'll have a chance to talk. I see that there are some things in the chat, and I haven't had a chance to see them. But I just want to say something about the future of y'all, which is, of course, the future of us. So we love the Y'all Award, right? We did it because we're passionate about the cultural heritage of Louisiana, and we're concerned that a hurricane is going to destroy it. And we're excited about using it to expand the holdings of the Louisiana Digital Library, which gets used all over the world and is a wonderful front door to the cultural heritage materials of our state. But we also know that LSU libraries will never be able to do enough. We'll never be able to do it fast enough. So I'll just sort of say this by way of what's next for the Gill Award after we get really get moving with it, is that we fully intend to decenter ourselves. And we want this to be a collaborative effort. And we know that in the future, this may look like additional grant funds, or I should say grant funds. Nothing I described here is grant funded. This is all institutional money from LSU. But to expand it, it might look like grant funds. It might look like any number of things. But I'm just planting that seed in everyone's head now. If you think, wouldn't it be great for me to do something similar in my part of the state? Please, let's talk. I think it would be great. Also, LSU is fine, but we don't have to have our fingers in everything. And that is it for me, everybody. Questions or comments, please let me know. I do want the help. This is my email address, and this is the website to the Y'all Award. lib.lsu.edu/services/digital/award. I'm going to go ahead and stop my share now.
Can you see the questions in the chat, Sophie?
I do. I'm seeing them now for the first time. Let's see. Should I read them myself? Let's see. Let me just take one moment. Patrice, I see your note here about obsolete external drives. I'm really sorry to hear that. Yeah, so but I'm glad you bring it up. So this is one of the tricky things, right? So the Louisiana Digital Library and any work that we're doing that builds on it is always presentation oriented, not preservation oriented. So we are encouraging every institution to just do what it can in order to preserve their own digital files. So when we leave, if we do a mobile digitization lab with you and we leave, the idea is that we do leave digital files on a hard drive with you so that you can use them for your patrons in any way, right? Because you own them. But ongoing preservation is definitely outside the scope. So I'm glad you bring that up. I wish I had something that I could say about that Malicious Museum to help, but unfortunately, all I can do is use it as an example of something I wish I had thought to put in my slide, and I definitely will for the next presentation like this. But yeah, it can definitely be tricky. So for everything that's going into the LDL, because LSU Libraries is the technical home for that, we manage the ongoing display of it, right? So we wouldn't let that fall obsolete, but we haven't really thought of a good way to keep preservation going for our partner institutions. Is there any questions about it? Is that clear? I feel like that's okay. Okay, great. And then Pam, you're asking if an institution already has a collection of digitized items, do you still consider adding those to the LDL? As a follow-up question, are the digitized items already in the LDL?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Are you saying that you have a collection already in the LDL or already digitized?
We have our own digitized collection. It's not on the LDL. It's on our own online catalog and database from the Bossier Parish.
Yes. Okay. Well, if you want to drop me a line, so that would just be a different sort of workflow in which y'all maybe could just join the LDL and upload your content.
Okay.
Let me just drop my my email address here if you'd like to talk more about it. But I think that's fantastic. And yes, I mean there are workflows and all that. Most of which I have very little to do for people coming in the traditional means of joining.
Thank you.
Okay, great. I hate to call you, so what is the best way to share this information with institutions that are underrepresented and may not be aware of this opportunity? If anybody here would like to share any of the links, would like to share my contact information, I'm always happy to talk to people. I'm more than happy to share this slide deck. We have blog posts through LSU. We've got interviews with people. We've got promotional materials like that, which I'm happy to share with anybody if you'd be willing to pass it along. Does that sound helpful? Maybe Janae, is there a good way to pass this along to everybody?
So, LAM can certainly do an email blast to all of our members and to our email list, which is much more than our members, because boy, I had no idea. I mean, I've used the library for years, but I had no idea that this opportunity was available. So I think it's wonderful. Yes, we would love to pass on the information. One of the questions from Patrice is also, how competitive is this opportunity, and how many have applied in the past?
Yeah, no, great question. So we put the application up, and then the global pandemic hit. We've had one applicant, and they won. So we'll be going. I think it's okay to say we don't have the paperwork signed yet, but we've definitely had lots of conversations. We intend to go to the River Road African American Museum next.
Okay, great.
Next month. we keep pushing it off, right? Because Ida, et cetera, Nicholas. But so they applied, but we haven't been promoting it. So this is the first. I'm doing, LAMA is also happening, right? The Louisiana Archives and Manuscripts Conference, and later today I'm doing the same talk for them. So this really is our kickoff of really promoting it a lot, in the hopes that so there were personal health reasons why we wouldn't want to go to places, and people wouldn't want us there, which we're trying to be sensitive to. We feel like, with the vaccinations, I've been in contact with my staff, because that's who would be doing the majority of the work. That's who was in the photographs. They're starting to feel a little bit more comfortable. So if institutions are feeling comfortable about having us or coming to us, feel free to apply at any point. But in terms of how competitive it is right now, not at all. And let me say, the reason it's an award is not to gatekeep. The point of forming it, so it didn't have to be an award, right? It could just be anybody. But the point of the award is to just encourage people to think a little bit more clearly about what they would want and how they would supply assistance. And we don't want to reject anyone. And this is, again, a model from Mississippi. The idea is that not everyone will get it every year. But if you apply and we can't do it this year, and especially if it's because of something about your application, the idea is that we would work with you to say, we have some concerns about the way you framed this, or it looks like maybe the space that you're offering won't really accommodate us, so we can't do it now. But we would open conversations about how the next application cycle you would be able to do it a lot. You would be able to supply something that's a lot more competitive. Does that make sense? Please don't think it's so competitive you don't stand a chance. We want you to get it. But with the application is really just a funnel, just to make sure that we're in communication as much as possible.
So is there any cost at all if you come in and digitize, or if you all come out? Is the award considered almost like a grant?
I'm sorry, could you repeat? Did you ask if there's any cost?
I said, is there any cost to the institutions that apply, or is the award almost like a grant that all expenses are covered?
All expenses are covered.
Wow, great.
Yeah. So if we go to you, no, we don't ask for any money from you. Definitely not. I think for the pilot, they bought the staff members some bread once, because it's like a really famous bakery in Jeanerette, but that was completely voluntary. It's not a bread-based system. But no, there's no LSU pays for this. Yeah. We worked really hard, behind the scenes, as I'm sure y'all can imagine, especially with the size of an institution like LSU. We worked really hard to try to iron this out before we launched it. And that was one of the things. The point is, we're working with institutions who are mostly volunteer run. At least is the way we see it and envision it. So no, we don't want to push any financial obligations to anybody. Ideally, but because of that, right? Like if an institution can offer assistance with metadata, et cetera, that makes it really, really valuable to us. But no, there's no cost.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Oh, let me just add to that. For the open digitization lab, so I guess we as an institution, as a state institution, we can only reimburse. So if you send somebody to us, your institution might have to put up the money for the hotel and the travel before we reimburse you. Does that make sense? I see some people nodding. Okay, I just want to make that clear. I think that's probably pretty well known for anyone who's worked with LSU. But, that's the only time somebody might have to pay something.
Well, thank you so much, Sophie. I said this was wonderful. I certainly learned. I think most of us did learn about this program that we hadn't heard of before, and like I said, we use the library all the time. I do have one more question. So right now it's like journals and photographs. Is there any plans once this really gets going to maybe add video to the digital library?
So let's see. So do you mean add video as in offer digitization of video that's held at institutions? Correct. Oh, okay. Oh, what a great idea. We have some video digitization equipment. It's not that good. Meaning like it almost digitizes in real time. You know what I mean? So if it's a 2-hour video, it takes 2 hours to digitize it. So that wouldn't be great. We would have to really think about what that is. But if this gets going and we're sort of chugging along for several award cycles, and everyone keeps bringing up something like videos.
And
Or people just keep making the case like, oh my gosh, it's really microfilm or nothing for us. You know what I mean? So like if it becomes like an obvious, stated, repeated need of the community, we could definitely look more into it. But we digital video, and you know, I'm thinking of like VHS to DVD. If it was reel to reel, you know, it gets more and more complicated. But yes, if you've got ideas about what would be really helpful for you that doesn't look like it's covered, please do just reach out. Well, either, you know, I'm happy to explain why it is that that's not on our radar right now, or maybe there's just something that we definitely could do. We just haven't thought of it.
we have a lot of audio cassettes of oral history interviews that we would love to get digitized. I mean, we've looked into it here and there, but it's complicated to. I mean, we don't have the equipment to do it, but I mean, that is something that would be a huge help to us, is to be able to digitize those oral histories, because we've got hundreds of cassette tapes.
That's good to know. If you reach out about the LDL or for anything else, let's definitely keep talking about that. I'm trying to think for our in-house digitization lab, I don't think we even have that equipment. So that might have to be something we would look into if we wanted to go in that direction. You know, the T. Harry Williams Oral History Center is here at LSU, and I know they used to have some. But anyway, let me just check the chat one more time to make sure I didn't see anything. Lauren, you're asking if an institution applies for the open option, they send staff to essentially do the work of digitization after receiving instruction. That's correct. Mm-hmm. So the idea is that you would come and just take advantage of our space. We would make a space for you. You would have a workstation, etc., and we would teach you how to use all the equipment that you would need. And you would come with your materials, and we teach you how to digitize it. I hope that answers your question.
So I think that's everything in the chat, and people asked their questions, and I want to thank you again. And Lam we'll be in touch with you about how, you know, what information you want us to send out to our listserv and all that to help you get the word out. And you are our first digital meeting, so this went swimmingly. So I appreciate that. So again, thank you very much, Sophie. We are going to send out a survey after this about the program, about the conference. So we ask that you all, you know, take a minute to fill that out for us, and we will hopefully see you in the next meeting. Thank you, Sophie.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.